That night in the Whitlow Mansion's marble dining room, my grandfather did not raise his voice when my sister bragged about kicking me out. He didn't defend me. He didn't even frown. He simply stirred his black tea, took a measured sip, and let Sienna finish her performance. She spoke about boundaries and independence, as if she had discovered the concepts herself, as if evicting her older sister from an apartment leased in that sister's name was an act of personal evolution. Colin sat beside her in a borrowed suit, nodding at all the right moments. When she finished, my grandfather smiled faintly and said only, "Is that so?" The next morning at 6:14 a.m., the family lawyer called me. He did not waste time with pleasantries. My grandfather wanted a private meeting. I was to come alone. And I was to bring the small papers he knows you keep. The implication was clear. He wasn't asking for reconciliation. He was asking for records. My name is Aurora Mitchell. I'm 34 years old, and I'm a senior strategy manager at Northline & Company, one of the more ruthless advertising firms in Chicago. I make my living anticipating risk, identifying structural weaknesses, and building defenses before anyone else sees the cracks. I am paid to find patterns in chaos, which is why standing in the antiseptic hallway of a short-term corporate rental in River North, rain soaking through my coat as I fumbled with a strange key and a strange lock, felt like a professional failure. This was my third trip from the car. The cardboard box in my arms, heavy with files I should have digitized years ago, sagged at the bottom, damp from the storm. My hair clung to my neck. My phone buzzed relentlessly in my pocket, Slack notifications stacking from a panicked client worried about a competitor's Q4 media buy. My career was accelerating. My personal life was imploding. The apartment was beige in a way that felt hostile. Laminate counters, generic art, the faint smell of industrial cleaner. It was silent except for the hiss of rain against the windows and the constant digital thwack of notifications. The Mitchell-Whitlow family group chat could not. Sienna had posted a photo. She and Colin were in my old living room, champagne glasses raised. My restored blue armchair was shoved against the wall. Empty pizza boxes littered the coffee table I had refinished by hand. Finally got the apartment all to myself, she'd written. Had to give Aurora a little push. She's 34. Come she learned to be independent. Love you, big sis. I didn't reply. I screenshotted the message. Saved it. Archived it in my encrypted ledger. Every action is a data point. That philosophy wasn't something I learned at Northline. I learned it at 12 years old at my grandfather's mahogany desk. If you don't have a record, you don't have a case, he'd told me when I cried over a grade I thought was unfair. Feelings are noise, facts are the foundation. So I built an evidence notebook. Over the years it evolved into a digital archive, time-stamped and organized, not because I wanted revenge, because I wanted clarity. And clarity was damning. The lease agreement for the apartment was in my name alone. Sienna's credit was destroyed by defaulted cards and unpaid loans. I had signed for her, paid the security deposit, covered utilities, sent transfers every month when she was a little short, paid $4,200 for an e-visit after she shattered her wrist skiing on a trip she couldn't afford, rebuilt an entire campaign deck when she missed a deadline at a job I'd helped her secure. I wasn't controlling her. I was underwriting her. The dinner at Willow Ridge that Friday wasn't a family gathering, it was a tribunal disguised as a meal. The mansion stood on Lake Forest's highest point, limestone and glass fused into something that felt less like a house and more like a fortress. Inside, portraits of severe ancestors watched from the walls. Sienna was glowing when I arrived. Colin looked smug. She repeated her narrative. She had been firm. She had given me 48 hours. She had managed the situation. She spoke the language of accountability as if she had authored it. My grandfather listened. When she finished, he smiled again. Is that so? Then came the envelopes. Inside mine was a brass key to his auxiliary library office and a note in his sharp script. Just give me the truth. Inside Sienna's was a digital questionnaire asking her to quantify her contributions to the family asset pool over 24 months. Inside Colin's was a document referencing unauthorized use of a company vehicle and falsified mileage reports. The dinner ended quickly. At 9 a.m. the next morning, we sat in my grandfather's working library. Steel, dark wood, cold light. Sienna claimed independence, claimed I controlled her, claimed I was jealous. My grandfather tapped a key, a screen slid down from the wall. The ledger appeared. Every transfer I made to her was recorded. Every emergency fund withdrawal, every liability offset. Total external support, $63,480. She stopped breathing. Then she pivoted to rage. "You did this!" she shouted at me. "You've been collecting things. You want to sabotage me." My grandfather turned to me. "Do you have a response?" I slid a single-page summary across the desk. "I don't have an opinion," I said. "Only facts." He closed the folder and nodded once. Then he dismantled Colin. The unauthorized car. The GPS logs. The fraudulent expenses. Security escorted him out before he could finish stammering. Sienna called me cruel. My grandfather slammed his cane against the desk. "This is not cruelty," he said quietly. "This is an audit." What I didn't know then was that the audit extended beyond her. The trust annex Marjorie delivered to my rental apartment that week made that clear. Section 3, the no humiliation rule. Public digital conduct intended to defame another beneficiary triggered review. Section 4, the care clause. A beneficiary who repeatedly subsidizes destructive behavior may be deemed in failure of fiduciary duty. I wasn't just documenting her dependence. I was documenting my own enabling. When my grandfather asked me to walk with him by Lake Michigan, the wind nearly knocked us sideways. He told me about his brother Robert, about hiding loans, about covering debts, about losing everything because he had cared more about family than balance sheets. "Enabling is not care," he said. "It is violence, just slower." He asked me one question. "Do you want to win or do you want to be right?" I told him I wanted fairness. 14 days later, in a glass-walled boardroom suspended over dormant rose gardens, the trust board convened. Sienna's social media posts were Exhibit A, my ledger was Exhibit B. The lease violation was Exhibit C. Colin's shell company siphoning money from a Willow acquisition target was Exhibit D. Sienna claimed jealousy, claimed fabrication. I presented 8 slides, timelines, transfers, security logs. A single final slide, $63,480. "I am not petitioning for her funds," I said. "I am correcting my own failure. I will no longer subsidize." The board found her in violation. But when the vote for permanent disqualification came, I stood again. "I waive any claim to her reallocated assets," I said. "Instead, I propose a vocational fund, performance-based, conditional, auditable. She earns reimbursement for education. She earns a grant only after 6 consecutive months of verified independence." It wasn't mercy, it was structure. Colin burst into the room mid-vote, screaming about wasted money, called her worthless, confirmed everything I had presented. The trustees blacklisted him from every Willow-affiliated contract before security dragged him out. The motion passed unanimously. Sienna's access to the primary trust was suspended. Only the vocational path remained. Then my grandfather stood. He announced a new entity, the Whitlow Integrity Fellowship. $5 million from his personal holdings. Conditional scholarships for any family member who proved self-reliance. I would be the operating trustee. Then he transferred his 2 controlling votes on the Whitlow Holdings Board to me for 18 months. Not as inheritance, as responsibility. Sienna left the boardroom hollow. Not furious, not defiant. Just emptied out. The next day I presented my ethical firewall protocol to Northline, Westridge, and Whitlow executives. It became the framework for the acquisition. They applauded my boundaries. That evening my grandfather handed me an envelope. Inside was a black and white photograph of him at 24, sitting on a narrow cot in a rented room after his brother ruined him. On the back he had written, "Fairness begins when you pay for your own room." A week later, I received a text from Sienna. I signed the lease. Studio in Uptown. I start Monday. I won't embarrass you again. No emojis, no blame. No performance. I stared at the skyline from my beige rental, cold Chicago air pouring through the open window. There was no triumph. No victory parade. Just balance. And for the first time in my life, that was enough.